Welcome back to the Word on Fire Show. I'm Matthew Petrusek, Senior Director of the Word on Fire Institute and the host of the Word on Fire Show. Thank you for joining us. Pope Leo XIII is widely regarded as the founder of modern Catholic social thought, a vast, systematized collection of moral teachings grounded in natural law and the magisterium of the Catholic Church. Leo XIII was responding to widespread social, economic, and moral upheaval caused by rapid industrialization in the West, combined with novel philosophical and political movements that challenged traditional conceptions of the human person and the meaning of human life. In taking the name Leo XIV, the new pope has signaled that the Church finds itself in a similar era, one marked by tumultuous social change. The question remains, however, whether the Catholic social thought of Leo XIII's time is still applicable today, given the radically different world we now live in, a world increasingly defined by the rise and possible dominance of artificial intelligence, robotics entering into mainstream life, the breakdown of regular physical contact among people, and the rise also of transhumanism, moral, economic, and political realities that Leo XIII could probably have never have conceived of. Can Catholic social thought help us to navigate these uncharted waters? Can it continue to guide, inspire, and warn us in an age so different from its origins? Is it still, to put it bluntly, useful? Here to discuss the unique challenges of our age and the enduring relevance of the Catholic social thought tradition is Bishop Robert Barron. Bishop, welcome back to the studio.
Hey, Matt. Good to see you.
So today we're talking about modern Catholic social thought, which really first crystallized under the papacy of Leo XIII over 100 years ago, but now seen fresh light under our new Pope, Leo XIV, and how that can continue to guide us in the age of artificial intelligence, AI. Before we get all that, though.
It's a big topic.
Yeah, well, we've got 25 minutes.
All right.
Before we get into all of that, today we're filming the 500th episode of the Word on Fire show. Did you ever think it would have this kind of run?
No, and it's hard to believe it. It was only this morning when I came in to record these that you reminded me of that. I remember the first one very well. I've just been named a bishop. I'm out in Los Angeles. I don't know where I was or who I was. And Brandon, was Brandon there? I think he was there physically with me for the installation, and we did the first show from my little apartment I had at the cathedral in Los Angeles. And it was experimental. We thought, well, let's try this podcast thing, and no, I did not imagine it would have this kind of longevity. So thank God.
Yeah, praise God, and here's to 500 more.
Yeah.
All right, so now AI and Catholic social thought. So we're going to divide the show up into sort of laying the table with Catholic social thought, its fundamental principles, and then looking how it can apply to the question of artificial intelligence and the implications of AI. So let's start with Catholic social thought. In a more basic sense, give us a definition of what it is. Just get us in the arena of Catholic social thought.
I would say it's a way of applying Catholic theology and spirituality to economic and political reality, right? So God has to do with everything. As I've often argued, you can't sequester God into one little corner, but God has to do with all of life. And therefore, God has something to do with our social life, our political life, and so on, economic life. And Catholic social teaching is an attempt to provide principles that guide, the way we live those dimensions of life in light of Christ. John Paul II said it was essential to the new evangelization. I always found that interesting. The Catholic social teaching is a way to evangelize people. And I think what he meant was to help them see how Christ, the Logos, should be involved in the whole of our practical, economic, and political lives.
Say a little bit about its roots, so modern Catholic social thought. These are not new ideas. They go back to the very beginning of the church.
Right.
Exactly. But Leo XIII is often identified as the figure that sort of first systematized it and promulgated it. So say a little bit about his role in modern Catholic social thought.
A really pivotal figure, Leo XIII. We have two extraordinarily long papacies in the 19th century. Pius IX, who's pope for 26 years or 28 years, something like that. And then his successor, Leo XIII, is pope for 25 or 6 years.
Right.
They both have these enormously long papacies. Leo died in 1903. In 1891, he writes this famous letter, Rerum Novarum, which is the genitive plural of new things, right? And the new things would be all the social, political, economic changes in the 19th century. So think of the rise of Marxism and of socialism, the rise of the industrial economy, the rise of a somewhat more, rapacious capitalism, All of that was going on late 19th century. And Leo is trying to respond to these new things in light of the church's convictions. So drawing indeed upon his papal predecessors, but also upon the great church fathers, upon Thomas Aquinas in a big way, upon Jesus himself and the Hebrew prophets, all of that, he comes up with this great statement. It was addressing the particulars of his time, but it also had a very universal resonance, and it inspired a whole tradition that we call modern Catholic social teaching, stretching from 1891 now all the way through Pope Francis. Now with the new Pope Leo, and it'll be very interesting to see when he writes his first encyclical on the social order, will be very interesting. But now it's what 130 years of a tradition. And it's been very influential on the life of the church, but also I'd say in the wider society. Mm-hmm. It's allowed the church to get involved in these conversations in a intellectually disciplined way. And so I think it's one of the great kind of jewels in the crown of our Catholicism today is our social teaching tradition.
Let's look at some of the key principles in the Catholic social thought tradition, which we certainly see in Rerum Novarum and the thought of Leo XIII more generally. The first is human dignity. What are the most essential elements of the Catholic conception of human dignity?
I think it's the most basic principle, is the dignity of the human person, that we're made in the image and likeness of God. And therefore, we cannot be abused and manipulated or reduced to some more generic social form. Like I'm just a cog in the social machine, I'm just part of the movement of history, all these things. Or put on the other side that I'm just this sort of cog in a capitalist order.
Yeah.
No, that each individual person made in God's image and likeness is a subject of infinite dignity. And all of our social teaching really hinges upon that, is grounded in that idea. And it's threatened from all sides. And one of the virtues of Catholic social teaching is to see that, to see how left, center, and right in different ways attack human dignity. It's the most fundamental principle of our social teaching.
Is it fair to say that as an anthropological principle, it cuts against both sort of collectivism, but also radical individualism?
That's right.
Because we all come from the same creator. We're individualized, but we're all united in that sense.
That's right.
As well.
They're very different understandings of the individual, right? And the biblical one is image and likeness. And so the church would tend to use not the language of the individual, but of the person, right? And the dignity of the human person, grounded in this theological identity. And yes, it's violated from both sides. I can become, from a right-wing perspective, just a kind of expendable part of a economic, behemoth. And from the left-wing side, I can become just part of the general movement of history, or to promote the revolution, you got to crack a few eggs, or those are both violations of this principle, and it's the most fundamental and the most important.
How about the Catholic conception of the common good? Many hear that and say, "Oh, that's like the greatest good for the greatest number," but it's not.
No.
Say a little bit about the difference.
No, we can define it pretty, I think, directly this way. The common good is that whole set of social conditions that allows for the full flourishing of individual human persons. So if we take the dignity of the person as fundamental, okay, the common good is not now I'm reducing I'm allowing the individual to become absorbed by the common. It's that set of conditions that make the flourishing of human persons possible. Mm-hmm. That's the common good. So I have to be attentive to social conditions that will now impinge upon the flourishing of individuals.
Is it accurate to say that from a common good perspective, the authentic good of all implicates the good of the individual, and the authentic good of the individual implicates the good of all?
Right. And the church talks about this social conditions. What are the marks of a society that allow for each individual person to come to full flourishing? Think of the maintenance of an educational system as a good example, right? So the common good dictates there should be a really well-functioning educational system. Now, why? Because you want each person within that society to flourish intellectually. Why should there be institutions that foster community life? Well, because I want each individual to have the opportunity for sociability and friendship. So it's an interesting play between the common and the particular, if you want. But the focus is on the flourishing of the person.
How about solidarity? What defines solidarity? How do we distinguish it from a sort of generic secular conception of social justice?
Yeah, we're interdependent. We're part of a family. We're not simply individuals who, by way of contract, establish a relationship. We are, by our very creation, connected to each other. I've argued that for years, that if you believe in the doctrine of creation, willy-nilly, we're all connected to each other because we're coming forth right now from the same creative source, from God. So we're like islands in an archipelago. We might look separate on the surface, but underneath we're connected in God. So the radical connection, interdependence of people, that's our solidarity. And that my flourishing will affect your flourishing and vice versa. I shouldn't flourish at your expense. You shouldn't flourish at my expense. But we're all in this together. I'll make it a little more concrete. And one of the more radical expressions of Catholic social teaching is the universal destination of goods. So this is grounded in the prophets and Aquinas. Leo XIII clearly affirms it, that we have a right to private ownership, indeed. So Catholic social teaching is opposed to all forms of collectivism, socialism. It's for private property. But when it comes, Aquinas says, to the use of what we own privately, our primary concern should be the common good. That's a rather extraordinary claim. I can't say, I've accumulated all this money and all this wealth and it's for me. No, you have a right to own it, but your first consideration should be, well, what's the common good? How can I use this wealth for the sake of the whole? Pope Francis applied that not just to individuals, but to nations. That if a wealthy nation, has a right to its property, but in the use of that, should its preoccupation be the common good of all nations? Yes. Well, that's an expression of solidarity.
How about subsidiarity? What is that, and how is it related to solidarity and the common good?
One of the great principles of Catholic social teaching, most clearly articulated by Pius XI in a letter called Quadragesimo Anno, which means in Latin, on the 40th year. So written in 1931, 40 years after Rerum Novarum.
Right.
I'd say it this way, subsidiarity, that political and social economic matters should be adjudicated at the most local level possible. And only when they cannot be adjudicated successfully at that level should you move to the very next level. There should be a prejudice always in favor of the more local solution to an economic, social, or political problem. That's subsidiarity. A violation of it would be, I've got a problem with the traffic light, in my neighborhood. Well, I'm going to go right to the president. I'm going to write to the president. Well, no. How about you start with your community, the community organization? Maybe you start with the police department or whatever. And only when it can't be adjudicated for whatever reason would you move to the next level. Maybe it's now the county seat or whatever. And then it can't be adjudicated there. Only then might you move to the state legislature, et cetera. So it's a prejudice in favor of the local, but at the same time, a willingness to move up the chain of hierarchy if necessary. But the prejudice in favor of the local. And so it's a balancing principle to solidarity, which emphasizes kind of what connects all of us to each other. Subsidiarity is trying to keep things at the local level. I find intriguing that, like in terms of our politics, subsidiarity tends to appeal more to a conservative or Republican mindset. Solidarity appeals more to a liberal democratic mindset. Okay, I don't really care. They're both parts of Catholic social teaching. And that's the way it goes, is the two sides within our system tend to kind of break against it. They'll find some things they like, other things they don't like. But Catholic social teaching is marked by an extraordinary balance, really, and that's a good example.
And both are necessary for the common good.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And finally, sin. How does the Catholic conception of sin factor into all of this, and why is it so important to keep in mind, especially when we're talking about political and social questions?
To me, it's one of the most important political principles, and it's been claimed by people like Russell Kirk and others on the conservative side as a mark of a healthy conservatism, and I would share this. It's anti-utopian. If we just make the right economic, cultural, social, political changes, we can make this thing perfect. We can eliminate suffering. We can eliminate poverty. It's just a matter of our will to change the structures. I think biblical people have a very keen sense of how stupid and therefore how dangerous that is. Given the fall, we're all compromised, all of us. We're all morally compromised, intellectually compromised. We can make progress. This is not some kind of nihilism, or it's not a resignation to inevitable suffering. But it's a keen sense that nothing we finally do is going to eliminate these social problems. Sin will always abide. As Jesus himself said, the poor will always be with you. One way to read that is, look, whatever you do, whatever changes you make, there are always going to be imperfections. And so I think at the heart of Catholic social teaching is a animus against all forms of utopianism. Because utopianism, either of the right or the left, right, are very dangerous. If I think, oh, no, we can do it, well, all right, then keep killing people, because we haven't killed enough people to make this thing work.
Yeah, right.
Look at the death camps of the 20th century on both the left and the right, both Nazism and communism, pile up corpses because both believed in a way, like Hitler believed, look, we'll just get rid of the Jews and we'll be fine. Do enough social engineering, we'll be fine. Or the Soviet version of it, you got to crack a few eggs to make an omelet, and if we can work out our economic problems by starving millions of people to death, well, go ahead and do it. The church stands athwart that with a very healthy sense of sin, of our imperfection. I like Thomas Sowell on this, the economist. We can make things better, but we will never make them perfect, and that's a very healthy instinct.
And is it accurate to say that in order to make things better, we have to recognize that we can't make them perfect?
Yeah, I think so. That's right. Because if you assume that, you will make things worse. I guarantee you'll make things worse. That's why, look, when I'm a young kid, there was still this kind of 1960s, 70s energy about, politics and what we can do and this great idealism. Man, it was knocked out of me. And thank God it was. You know what I'm saying? That kind of naive idealism was knocked out of me because that's a dangerous road to go down. Oh boy, I'll just elect this guy and it'll be great. Or if only that party got in power. I have a very, I think, healthy sense of, no matter who's in there, it's not going to be, certainly not perfect. Probably won't even be that great. Maybe we'll do a little less damage than we might have done otherwise. I'm sounding a little too cynical now, but I think that's a very important, healthy principle.
It's good, a political slogan. I'll be less bad.
Yeah, I'll be less dangerous than the other guy. There's a lot of truth to that, actually.
Well, as a bridge to our discussion of artificial intelligence and how we can take these principles and apply them, it's very important to note that our new Pope has deliberately chosen, of course, the name Leo XIV. So what do you think he's trying to communicate by taking that name?
Well, he himself said it, didn't he? Because we were all kind of guessing at it when we heard the name, and I think we all knew, okay, a connection to Leo XIII. He himself has said, as Leo was dealing with the new things of his time, and I just named some of them, all the kind of the revolutionary spirit, the rise of industrialism, early forms of capitalism. There are new things today Leo XIV has recognized. And among them would be AI, I think, is one of the new things in technology and the internet that we're dealing with today. And so, again, Catholic social teaching should be applied to these new things.
So one of the points of skepticism, probably not critique yet, but skepticism say, well, look, okay, so these principles we've identified, you can see how it plays out in the rise of industrialization, but we are now in such a different kind of situation historically that perhaps they're not going to be as helpful as we think they are. So let's look at that question, especially as we see the rise of artificial intelligence and the blurring of the lines between man and machine. Before we do, though, we have to get a sense of what artificial intelligence is. So what's your understanding of it, Bishop? Both what makes it intelligent and what makes it artificial?
Well, the intelligence side, I think of AI in its various instantiations as a very, very sophisticated and very impressive and very rapid search engine. That it can manage the information now available to us through the internet, which is like everything. I've got an iPhone in my pocket, and I can, in principle, call upon almost all the information available in the world. I can ask it to call up, Aristotle's Metaphysics, and I can ask it who won the 1962 World Series, and I can ask it who was the star of F Troop, and I can ask that phone almost anything. Well, AI is an extremely sophisticated means by which we can access all of this information. And then, here's maybe, again, where the intelligence comes in, to order it in novel and creative ways, So like when you can say to certain AI functions, write me a poem in the manner of Alfred Lord Tennyson. And within seconds, out comes at least for the moment, credible poem in the manner of Alfred Lord Tennyson. Well, what's it done there? I would say it's mimicking intelligence because it's gathering data and then able to collate and arrange it in a way that at least mimics creativity. So there's the artificial side of it. It's not real intelligence. It's not real creativity. It's a kind of mimicry of creativity, but based upon an extraordinary ability to search and collate what's available through the internet. That's how I would characterize it.
Sure. The characterization of something artificial, there's a bit of a philosophical quandary there because artificial things do exist, but they still exist. So can we dig a little bit deeper on the difference between something that's real and authentic and something that's real and artificial?
Yeah, as I've been using this language of mimicry because I think AI, it mimics consciousness or mimics intelligence. Look, I'm a Thomist. What makes my mind immaterial is its capacity to engage in sheer abstractions and to understand them. So not just entertain them, but to understand them, to enter into their intelligibility in a conscious way, and then to order what it knows, even in creative patterns. So the immateriality of the mind is a function of this capacity for dealing with sheer abstractions, with the properly immaterial, the properly invisible, as we were saying last time around. Authentic intellection is the creative movement within that sphere of pure intelligibility. What's happening with AI, it seems to me, is a mimicry of that. It's not the authentic, subjective owning of that process, which is involved in real consciousness.
So we're all grappling with the emergence of this at both the philosophical and the practical level. We'll get some more practical questions in a moment. But at this point in your understanding of AI, would you say it's a difference of degree or kind from previous technological developments?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I'm not sure I know the right answer to that. We were talking with some of the fellows here before we were recording, and the consensus seemed to be it's a difference in kind. This is different than other forms of technological advancement that we've seen. There's something qualitatively different, a little more dangerous about this because of that remarkable way of mimicking real consciousness. And can we tell the difference between, at least when you're kind of looking at something objectively? I'm talking to you right now, assuming I'm meeting a real consciousness. Will I be able to distinguish you from, let's say, in maybe just a few years, a pretty advanced robot endowed with AI? I don't know. And that, I think, that's maybe a qualitative difference from other types of technological advance that we've experienced. Let's say in Pope Leo's time, moving from a horse-drawn carriage to an automobile. That was going on right after him, I suppose. That caused a huge uproar and economic turmoil and so on. Think of the emergence of the telephone and what that meant. Then, in my own lifetime, the emergence of the computer, what that meant. Is AI qualitatively different than that? Is it a difference in kind? Maybe.
Well, let's look at some more sort of concrete instances of this question that, again, we're dealing with in real time. So with the emergence of AI, we also have the emergence of robotics. And as you suggested, and is actually already the case, there are humanoid robots, and it's getting harder and harder to tell the difference between, especially from a difference, human perception of a human, perception of a robot. But speaking sort of at the metaphysical or anthropological level, is it ever possible, in principle even, to create something that would replace a human being?
No. As you say, the difference between what you can recognize and what's really the case, and it might be true that it'll be very difficult to recognize the difference. But no, at the metaphysical level, when you're dealing with AI, you're dealing with a sophisticated machine, which is mimicking certain moves of consciousness, but is not an immaterial consciousness. So no, at the metaphysical, subjective level, no, there's a qualitative difference. The trick, though, as you suggest, is the recognition factor. Would I be able to recognize it readily? And, I find this very interesting because, heck, this goes back to when I was a kid. 2001, A Space Odyssey comes out, and this wild fantasy about space travel. But the one part of it that was really prescient was the computer, right, that turns on the astronauts. Hal, the computer, and has that kind of soothing voice and everything. But they realized by the end, wait a minute, this thing is turned on us. We invented it.
Yeah.
Look, even Mary Shelley, if you go back to the 19th century, Frankenstein, I mean, saw this problem coming, that we'll make something that will now turn on us and destroy us. Now it's becoming much more of a reality. And you see it also in, what was it? We mentioned that one Spielberg movie, but the other one, what was it called? Was it called AI? Remember with the little kid, there's a robot, and the family takes him in, and he's just like a little kid.
Daryl?
No.
It's a Disney movie.
No, but we've been anticipating this thing for a long time. It's funny in the popular culture. The robot's turning on us. Or what's the Will Smith movie? Right?
iRobot, yeah.
iRobot, right.
Yeah.
So, but it's funny, they don't emerge as benign.
Oh, the Terminator, is that what you're thinking of?
Well, I think Terminator 2 is another one, right? That we knew the machines are going to turn on us.
Yeah, right.
No, in fact, what's it called? AI, the Spielberg movie. The kid.
Ready Player One, that's one.
No, that's one you would, that's one you would reference. But
there's a lot of them.
But what's interesting is that they don't emerge as, hey, how wonderful. They all emerge as like, oh my God, this is a nightmare, right? So it's like the human race has anticipated this for a while.
Yeah. That
this is a nightmarish scenario. So, we all use AI. Heck, I use it all the time in the car. I ask the thing to play a Beatles song, or the GPS is guiding me, and this little voice is talking to me. Do you ever find yourself with GPS apologizing? Like I'll say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I should have taken that route." It's not a person; it's a stupid machine mimicking a voice.
Yeah.
But we all use it. Obviously, I don't want to go back behind that. But how do we draw the line between this helpful, useful tool and this now dangerous threat?
It's occurring to me as you're describing all this, and I don't know if there's a connection here, but in the creation of sin, so sin is something that we introduce into reality. We create something that wasn't there. It's not natural. There's no reason for it to be there. It's sort of tearing a hole in the fabric of existence. We create something that then we can't fix, we can't control. I think that has something to do with the sort of haunting recognition that we are really capable of creating something that can destroy us.
Yeah. No, and that's going back to Mary Shelley. That's a very biblical kind of idea.
Yeah.
How dangerous it is to be playing around with that. And we, she writes that at the Enlightenment is just getting going, and this confidence in reason and what science can do and all that. And she was a prophetess, to say, yeah, I know science maybe can do this, but it shouldn't be doing it. And it's unleashing very dangerous powers that will turn on us. That's a good question. Really. That's as old as at least the Enlightenment. If I can do it, yeah, okay, but should I do it?
Right.
And if the moral question is simply put aside, oh no, I can do, these wonderful things I can do, but should I be doing it? And if the principle, go back to social teaching, is the dignity of the human person,
right?
Maybe certain things I shouldn't be doing. And, what's frightening to me about the AI stuff is, at some level you say, well, look, can't you at least pull the plug if you want to just turn the thing off? Maybe not. And that's Hal from 2001. We're trying to turn this thing off, but it won't let us.
That's right.
Right? No, I'm sorry. You can't.
Well, I mentioned right before we started airing that there's a Wall Street Journal article that now AI has learned how to appear as if it's been turned off in order to keep working to avoid threats. So it's already crossed that threshold.
Well, right, and we all have this experience of our phones are always listening to us.
They're always on, yeah.
It's like, the first time that occurred to me, this was maybe a couple of years ago, when just scrolling through Facebook, I had said something to a friend, and it was some one-off kind of thing. And suddenly, like an ad for that thing appeared. Yeah. I said, well, wait a minute, how did that do that? I had no idea. And then, well, it's listening to you. It's listening to me? I find that unnerving.
Yeah,
I find that unnerving.
Well, let's dig into the moral dimensions of it with a bit more specificity. And so we have our toolbox of the Catholic social thought tradition, and the goal is to see if we can apply some of those tools to these more specific instantiations of the problem of AI. So what limiting principles might there be from the Catholic social thought tradition? First, on the embedding of AI, the embedding of technology directly into the human body, which is already happening. It's already happened in a rudimentary sense with like pacemakers, but now there's capacity enhancing.
Right.
How can we navigate that?
The old principle has always been if technology helps the natural powers of the body. Like we're both wearing glasses, right? Well, these are artificial things, but they're helping the natural finality of the eyes to see. Or you do a surgical intervention or like a pacemaker. It's not repugnant to the body, it's aiding the body in its natural function. So that's the principle. Now, I don't know these AI things like brain implants that allow you to access the internet.
Well, now
I don't know.
People, for example, with AL, so there's a restorative function to them.
Yeah.
Individuals who've lost the use of their bodies, for example, now can communicate directly with a screen.
Yeah. And I see that as far as it goes as something legitimate if it's enhancing a natural capacity, But I don't know enough about the medicine of all that and what exactly they're doing. But if it enhances the natural power, that's seen as a good thing.
And how does that relate to our identity as dignified creatures? This distinction between, for example, maybe restoration versus above and beyond enhancement.
I don't know. I get kind of lost at the fringes there of the conversation because I don't know what these things are exactly and what they can do and what they promise. And would only certain people have access to these things? That's one of the issues too.
The social justice question. It's the the solidarity.
If it
question.
Becomes like such an expensive or it's a rare thing that only a handful of people get access to it, can they prevent others from getting access to them? I go back to I think through movies, Star Wars. When Luke Skywalker's hand is cut off, and let's put an artificial hand on, which is just like his other one, and I suppose in principle there you've got an enhancement of a natural capacity. But I don't know enough about the details of like the medical implications of these things. But the principle remains, I think, pretty clear.
Another massive change we're already on the cusp of is the development with the integration of AI into what's often now identified as the metaverse, but virtual reality.
Oh, right.
So now we're capable, they are capable, I don't want to be associated with this, are capable of creating this entire digital world that you can interact with by putting on an apparatus. And so the idea is that over time we'll become more and more isolated as individuals living in a digital world that's entirely fabricated, and that'll be our primary mode of interaction with other human beings through avatars. What does Catholic social that say about
that strikes me as deeply sick because I think of the kid now on his iPhone all day and kind of divorced from the world and caught up in this addictive world of the internet. And if I now raise that to the nth degree and I'm enveloping my entire person in that virtual reality, I think that's bizarre. And we should be in touch with God's world. We should be in touch with each other. We should be dialoguing with, friends. So no, the immersion in that virtual world, it's like the old, fantasies about if I took a pill that always made me feel good, would that be the right thing to do? And no, obviously not. Is it, even a painful life but lived in the real world is better than some artificially constructed emotional state. Mm-hmm. So I think it's pretty clear that that's dangerous stuff.
What about the incarnational reality of the human body? Is there something that's just built into our nature that we need the physical contact in local communities?
Oh, absolutely. And it's God's world that matters and that draws you out of yourself. And the trouble with that virtual stuff is I started inventing the world that I want to live in instead of the world that's kind of given to me. It's so important in philosophy and indeed theology, the givenness of being. Mm-hmm. It's given to me as a gift. If I start saying, no, I want to live in the world that I've invented for myself, talk about curvatus in se, right? I've caved in around myself. And it's like the old Schwarzenegger movie, the Total Recall, when he goes into his, I'll invent my own world to live in. I mean, how weird and unhappy that is.
So this is an awkward question to ask, but unfortunately one that's completely necessary nowadays, is how should we respond to those who argue that having a robot boyfriend, girlfriend, or even spouse should be considered perfectly normal and even potentially praiseworthy?
I would recommend against it.
Mr. Barron says no.
No to robots. No, but the question you raised earlier, that's to me, the frightening one is let's say, I don't know how many years in the future, that a robot could be developed. And again, the movies anticipated this, that perfectly credible. Or even now, aren't there these things where people can talk to, like, Siri or something, and in sophisticated versions, she can sort of respond in an emotionally appealing way.
Already here.
Right. And so I can see someone very lonely being drawn into that. And what you have is a mimicking of a real friend, the mimicking of a friendly voice. But no, that's exceptionally dangerous, seems to me.
It seems also the Gnosticism that you've pointed to has also sort of paved the way for this, because the body doesn't matter anymore.
Right.
And so if we can attribute consciousness to a mechanical object, then why not think of it as another person to be in a relationship with?
No, quite right. And again, we're in a fallen world, and people are sad for all kinds of reasons, and you can see why they'd be seduced by something like that. That's the side of it that is spooky, isn't it? It's spooky from a psychological and spiritual standpoint. So why not have a robot that is just attuned to your needs all the time, will do whatever you want, will say the things you always want to hear, but then you're not alive. You're stuck in your own sinful self. Mm-hmm.
We also have to look at the economic implications of this as well, especially since Catholic social thought is very attentive to economic realities of human beings. So Goldman Sachs has estimated that 25% of all jobs within the next 10 years, so we're not looking at a 100-year frame, we're looking at 10 years, will be automated. How can Catholic social thought principles help us to navigate what appears to be inevitable at this point?
It should stand against it. You know what strikes me now? I'm an old fuddy-duddy now, I suppose. I walk into these, where was I the other day? I was out of town, and we just wanted to get fast food.
Kiosk.
Right? They drive me crazy, the kiosks. I hate them. Because I'm used to, you walk up to, here's a human being, maybe they're not in the best mood, maybe they're, a difficult teenager or something, but it's a human being. Hi, could I have a Whopper and large fries and a Coke? Okay, what do you want in that Whopper? Oh, can I have, the kiosk, first of all, it insults me. It's like, why am I doing all the work? I'm here to get food. I'm going to give you money for it. And I got to do all the work, But the second thing is it's taken a job away from that kid. And now you walk into these places, there aren't any. There's no option. There isn't a human being to talk to. You've got to go through the kiosk.
Right.
And I'm bad at kiosks. So what, did I hit that? Is that the diet? I don't want a Diet Coke. I'm like now a typical old man that doesn't know how to handle these things. But the deeper problem you're driving at is just that it used to be when I worked at Crocs and Bertano's bookstore as a stock boy when I was a kid. I don't know if that could be done by AI, that job, but sure, you're taking away a chance for someone to exercise, maybe at a minimal level at that point in his life, but some intelligence, some creativity, some interaction with other human beings. I still have friends from when I worked at Crocs and Bertano's as a 16-year-old kid.
It's how you get habituated into adulthood.
Right, right. And you got to get to work on time, and I know you don't feel like going, but you got to go. If all that's eliminated, that's a real danger. And, to our earlier point, you think of, yes, we've gone through these transitions before. So from the horse-drawn carriage to the automobile, okay, that caused a big upheaval. We adjusted. Did it affect some people's jobs? Sure. But were other ones invented that made up for it? Probably. Will that happen now with the AI revolution? I don't know. Will they be replaced? And if so, are you inviting now a whole generation of people, nothing to do? Their minds are not called upon to be intelligent. Their wills aren't called forth. They're living in isolation in their own little virtual reality. That's an unhappy world. That's a really unhappy world.
Well, that leads to the next question here is it, on principle, is it a good goal to have to seek to eliminate work from human life by technological advancement?
No, work is something, yes, the Bible, one aspect of it is, you'll work by the sweat of your brow and all that kind of a punishment for sin. But then look at John Paul II, and that he represents another side of the tradition that says, no, work is wonderful. And we all know that. Once in a while having a day off, it's great. And we enjoy having a day off. But if someone told me, for the rest of your life, you don't have to do anything. You're on vacation. You got nothing but days off. I'd fall into depression in about 2 days.
Yeah.
I need work. I love it. When I have challenging work to do ahead of me, I'm looking forward to the day. And I do a lot of writing, and people say, "Oh, you write so fluently." No. Writing to me is like breaking rocks. It's like hard labor, writing. But I'd much rather have that than nothing to do. So no, I don't want work eliminated from my life. I want it enhanced, right? So, now indeed, I remember, look, I'm old enough when I was doing research. I got to go to a book. I got to find where that is. And where is that on my shelf? Oh, I can't find that darn book.
The card catalog.
Card catalog, and where is that? Okay, I love the fact that we now have enhanced ways of finding information. Great. But I would never want my work to be taken away from me. My work is part of my dignity, right?
Well, there's strong empirical evidence showing that those who retire, and what that means is they go into a life of pure leisure, die much earlier than those who continue working.
Absolutely. We know it's funny. My father retired at my age now, and it was common in those days. I couldn't imagine it. The furthest thing from my mind is retirement. The furthest thing from my mind. So I get that, and I got all kinds of projects I got planned and things I want to do. Good. Work is good. And we don't want this, there's the Frankenstein's monster thing. I don't want this taking away something that belongs to my joy and my dignity.
And as a final category, there's obviously much more we could be talking about, but we need to hit this one as well, is relationship between AI and art. So what value, if any, Bishop, do you see for art that's entirely generated by AI? And we're looking at movies, we're looking at music,
I know.
we're looking at literature.
Well, I must say, this was demonstrated to me a few months ago. And I didn't know AI was capable of this sort of thing. Take a couple of characters and say, write a screenplay involving these two characters, like one drawn from literature and one drawn from, and by God, it did it. And it did it credibly. Maybe not at, Spielberg levels, but it credibly.
Yeah.
In seconds, created a screenplay. It's amazing, and it's frightening, and it's unnerving. And it's a threat to the very creativity that we love and that we honor. And it's a mimicry of creativity, because all it's doing is drawing on pre-existing things and kind of assembling them in fresh ways. And sure, creative people do the same thing to some degree. I mean, you're drawing on what you know, but that real spark of intelligence that's involved in real creativity, I don't want some weird mechanical simulacrum of that. I want the real thing, both in other people and in myself. Mm-hmm. And so AI is some weak-minded substitute for that. And then, it's bugging, I know this, teachers from first grade to graduate school. How do you know that the student has produced a paper? How do you know anymore? They go on ChatGPT and they get this credible paper. Yeah. Give me something on a Cartesian reading of whatever, and it comes up with it credibly. I've heard teachers say you got to go back to blue books. They got to bring a blue book into class, have a student write out.
That really is the only way now. Yeah,
right.
Because they have AI detectors.
Yeah,
and then they have AI blockers.
Well, right. I know the machines will figure it out.
Yeah.
Well, the Matrix, there's the other one, right? Yeah. The machines have taken over. I mean, we've always known this. That's a very interesting thing to me. Very interesting thing. We've always known this. Like we've been afraid of it for a long time. And the movies have shown it. But now it's upon us. It's upon us. So the church has got to be right there, I think. Celebrating what should be celebrated and raising a flag too.
So let's now turn to our listener question. Today we have Genevieve from Indiana asking about how we should respond to the statement, which is a common one: science doesn't care what you believe.
Hi, Bishop Barron. My name is Genevieve from Indiana. Today I saw a bumper sticker on a Tesla that said, "Science doesn't care what you believe." How would you respond to that?
Yeah, I haven't seen that one yet. So it's coming from someone, I guess, who's into scientism or into a purely materialistic view of the world. Science explains everything. And so like religious belief is just a matter of indifference. The trouble is it's self-refuting, that sort of thing. Because scientism is not a scientific conclusion. It's a philosophical conclusion. Indeed, it's something you believe, right? Don't tell me that you've generated a materialistic worldview from a purely scientific analysis. You haven't. You've derived that from other sources, and you've come to believe it. So it's a philosophical claim, and it's a matter of belief. So the sign itself, science doesn't care what you believe, is implicitly self-contradictory, is what I would say. And I would hope that kind of arrogant scientism, I think, is waning. I think it had its heyday about 20-some years ago, but I think it's waning because it's collapsing under the weight of its own stupidity.
Well, thank you.
And I am a robot. I now want to reveal the fact that I am a robot.
As am I. As am I. If you see me with hair in the next episode, you'll know it's not the real me. Well, thank you so much, Genevieve, for your question. If you'd like to ask Bishop Barron a question for a future Word on Fire show, please visit askbishopbarron.com. Again, that's askbishopbarron.com, and we always do love to hear from you. Well, Bishop, I suspect we're going to be talking about these themes for a long time to come, but thank you.
You're welcome. God bless you.
That does it for us today. Thanks for joining us on the Word on Fire show. If you're interested in learning more about how Word on Fire can help you grow closer to Christ, become a better evangelist with and for others, and work for the common good, consider joining the Word on Fire Institute. Check us out at institute.wordonfire.org. That's institute.wordonfire.org. We'll see you next time.